Hi everyone, this is Pooja Kant and I'm going to be talking about the science of trauma exposure response. In the previous video, I explained what the trauma exposure response was and we were talking about the book Trauma Stewardship. In this video, I'll continue with that and talk about the signs. Now, these signs can be present in varying degrees and you'll have to see which signs apply to you and which signs don't. There are some signs that you'll have that you will feel more acutely than others, and it's up to you to decide and see where you're at when it comes to the trauma exposure response. The first sign is feeling helpless and hopeless. When you feel that no matter what you do, it's not going to make any significant difference in your line of work. You feel that your work is inadequate or you are inadequate. That belief can also be there. And some people also start feeling personally responsible for the suffering that they see in their line of work. So if you feel helpless or hopeless, then it's good to acknowledge it, because the first step towards working on anything or processing anything is to acknowledge it. The second sign is hypervigilance, and you feel switched on all the time. It's the feeling that you cannot be present for anything else apart from your work, that anything else, doing anything else, or being present for anything else is absolutely impossible. And you feel that you're always on the go. And there's no time for rest, there's no time for breaks. The next one is reduced creativity. You will feel a reduction in your creativity due to the trauma exposure response, and it would be good to acknowledge that and look into that. The next one is not being able to embrace complexity. So it's something similar to having a black and white kind of thinking, or all or nothing thinking, where you want to see everything as right or wrong or in black and white. And there's no space, no room for the gray areas in between, which means that it's very difficult for you to embrace complexities, and you're always looking for a sign to tell you whether something is right or wrong. When it becomes difficult to embrace that grayness, then definitely it can be one of the signs of trauma exposure response. The next one is minimizing, where you feel that you're losing the ability to empathize, and it takes more of traumatic information for you to be moved by it, which means that you end up feeling saturated, and you're so saturated that you cannot take in more information, and that you need more disturbing information, for the lack of a better word, to move you. Minimizing can also be when you trivialize a situation because you feel that the current situation is much less impactful, is not as impactful as the past situation. So you end up minimizing the current situation. That's also another way to look at minimizing as a sign of trauma exposure response. The next one is chronic exhaustion, having physical illnesses and feeling so tired and so fatigued and exhausted. So there is one kind of tired where it's a good kind of tired, and you feel tired at the end of the day and you end up getting a good sleep. And there's the other kind of tired where you feel completely depleted and drained of energy, and that's on a regular basis. Then that's a sign of trauma exposure response. The next one is inability to listen, deliberate avoidance. When you have this kind of a feeling that you're overwhelmed by life and you have less energy for things that are enjoyable. So whatever gave you joy previously no longer gives you joy, and you avoid social situations, avoid people. There's a avoidance pattern that comes in. Then we have dissociative moments, and this one I'm going to quote directly from the book because it makes so much sense. In dissociative moments, we cut ourselves off from our internal experience in order to guard against sensations and emotions that can be overwhelming to our system. Anyone who has work where their personal history is related to it can have dissociative moments, and many people, even without any personal connection, can have these moments. So that explains it. The next one is a sense of persecution, and it's described in the book as the feeling as if there's a lack of efficacy in one's life. When you end up feeling that or believing that others have more power over your well-being, or that you have no control over the outcome, then a sense of helplessness and hopelessness as well as sense of persecution sets in, and you lose your faith in the ability to bring about change. The next one is guilt, and when we compare the suffering of others with ourselves and we end up feeling guilty about our privilege. The privilege of being in a better position suffering wise, maybe we feel we've suffered less or we are in a better place, we are doing well. So there is a guilt about the privilege of wellness. Then you end up minimizing your wellness in order to equalize the situation. And this is a very important sign and a very big sign of trauma exposure response. And in an effort to connect with others, what might end up happening is you end up appearing as inauthentic, pretentious, and patronizing, and not being honest with the people that you're connecting with. The next one is fear, and while fear is a normal response, it attunes you to what is happening in your immediate environment. It makes you aware of physical dangers as well as emotionally, whether you're prepared to take on a task or not, do something or not. And you can read up more about it in the book Language of Emotions by Carla McLaren. When the fear is not acknowledged and you live in denial, then what happens is that it can make us uncomfortable to recognize that we have so much in common with our clients who are also fearful. And this has been explained really well in the book Trauma Stewardship. The next one is anger and cynicism. And again, anger is a normal response when there is injustice, there is unfairness, somebody has violated your boundaries or you're seeing someone else's boundaries being violated. And if anger can be acknowledged and honored, then it can be channelized in a very healthy manner. So instead of suppressing it or acting on it, you can channelize anger and you can have a good relationship with it. But most people don't have a good relationship with anger, and they have very mediocre skills, let's say, to manage anger. So in this book, the authors say that if we are not comfortable with our own anger, our clients may find it impossible to process their anger with us. And cynicism can be a way to cope with anger. So you can watch out for signs of cynicism when you are suppressing your anger or acting out. Then it means that this is one of the trauma exposure responses. The next one is inability to empathize and numbing. When we are so saturated and overwhelmed, then we don't want to register any more feelings and we want to shut down. So shutdown is a way to prevent ourselves from feeling anything more because there is so much of saturation. And this can obviously lead to a reduction in empathy and we can become numb. Addiction is the next one. Apart from the usual addictions, you can get addicted to working and the adrenaline rush, and you're wired all the time and you cannot get off that. It's like running on the hamster's wheel and not being able to get off that. The next one is grandiosity, where you end up feeling that who else will do it if I don't? And this I've often seen with people who work in animal shelters and who rescue animals, they end up feeling this way, that who else is going to do it? If I don't rescue this dog, who else is going to do it? And we can lose our sense of being grounded in reality, our sense of capacity and our limits, that there is only so much that we can do, that there is a limit to what we can do. So this is an important sign of trauma exposure response. So these were the signs of trauma exposure response from the book Trauma Stewardship. I hope you enjoyed watching the video, and please give me a feedback. Thank you so much.